Welcome to the latest Proceed webinar. This year we run a series of webinars with our partners. I'm really delighted to be running this one as a joint Proceed and AWS session. We have many customers at Proceed running SAP systems on Amazon Web Services, and so we built considerable experience of the benefits and considerations of working with SAP on AWS, which we're really pleased to be sharing with you today. My name is Robert Rubin. I'm your host today. I've been at Proceed for just over a year. I lead our decommissioning business, and I'm joined today by two, I'll say, industry leaders, which we're really delighted to have. So first of all, Jonathan Lake, who's head of the UK SAP business at AWS, and Nick Parkin, the MD of Proceed Group. We'll hear from both of them, and then they'll be having a discussion on our subject today, which is reducing the TCO and increasing agility of SAP landscapes. So we do welcome your questions. We'd really like to have as many questions as possible from you. Please do put them into the question box in GoToWebinar or the chat box if you can't find that, and we'll make sure to come back and address those later on. So to get the ball rolling now, I'll hand over to Jonathan.
Yes, thank you very much, Robert. And I'm absolutely delighted actually to be on this webinar this afternoon. And I think it's fair to say that many of you as business leaders are looking to understand, especially in these times, how to optimize costs of your SAP estate and to do it while addressing unparalleled levels of business change. And certainly, you know, as somebody who's worked in the SAP world for the last 25 years, you know, I think it's fair to say that there's been more challenges and more change in the last year than ever. I would just like to start by first of all introducing AWS. So we've got a long and proud history and proven track record of helping SAP customers manage their complex data landscapes. And today, more than 5,000 SAP customers trust AWS as the platform of choice. You know, we've been working with SAP since 2008. Don't know whether you want to show that on the slide, Robert, but since 2008, we've been working closely with SAP. There we go. And since that time, we've been constantly innovating and constantly bringing out new innovations for SAP. And I won't go through all of these areas, but I think some of the big areas that we provide that really are making a difference for customers are around the level of SAP automation, the level of DevOps, and the unparalleled scalability and availability that we're able to provide our customers, as well as all the innovative areas as well that we can talk about very shortly. But before we do talk about that, it's probably worth us just talking about, you know, what are the drivers for moving to the cloud, and I think that's well illustrated actually on the next slide. Obviously, some of these areas will be familiar to you. I think the hot topic at the moment is clearly the cost reduction, and we can talk a little bit about that, but certainly that's an essential piece. A lot of our customers now that are moving to AWS are looking to refresh that infrastructure, and I think the technical migration and cost reduction probably represents, you know, about half of our customers. But certainly the other half are looking for that digital transformation, the move to SAP S4 as part of that digital transformation agenda that they're looking to drive. But there are some other areas of innovation as well, such as data lakes and other areas, the improved availability and services that you get from moving workloads onto AWS as well. And let's talk about a little bit more about those details, shall we? In the next slide. And to help get to a business case overall, we've actually developed what we call the AWS Cloud Value Framework, and that's based on direct customer feedback from thousands of real SAP customer business cases as they've made their decision to move their workloads to AWS. So we've actually conducted a number of studies over the course of a number of years across about 1,500 customers across 26 industries, and we've done that with an independent market research firm to examine the results and the benefits that our customers have realized from moving from their current workload onto AWS. So this cloud value framework is really built on that knowledge and expertise, and what we're seeing is 4 distinct areas of value. So on the left hand side you can see obviously the cost savings, and for the overwhelming majority of customers, what we found from that study is that they're seeing somewhere around 27 to 42% average ongoing cost reduction by moving to AWS. So really exciting to say that actually there are a lot of levers that can be worked on in order to achieve those cost savings, and those cost savings are achieved by things like right sizing, leveraging the elasticity offered in the cloud, both in terms of time and resources, and making sure that the appropriate pricing models fit your business and your workload. So there is a really exciting opportunity to actually save cost, and particularly in the area of OPEX as well. Just an example, recently there was a major migration that we carried out with Enel, and we were able to reduce storage costs by about 60% with all the financial and service benefits. And then if you move further to the right hand side, you can see all of the staff productivity benefits and gains that are achieved, and here again there are some dramatic business benefits that you can see. So around about 50 to 60% improvement in IT administration costs there. So there's some really big efficiency savings, and just to put some examples there. So if you can reduce the number of incidents that are going through the system, if you can automate a lot of those mundane tasks, then there's a real opportunity for you to improve efficiencies there. The third area is around operational resilience. So by improving the SLAs and reducing unplanned outages, and there's a real opportunity here to improve both unplanned and planned downtime overall. And typically what we're seeing is 20 to 30% reduction in monthly critical incidents alone on average from that research that we've done. And I think the final area is around the area of business agility. So the ability to deploy new features, to deploy applications and functionality much faster, and reducing the number of errors. And what we're seeing there is around, on average, about 3.5 times faster deployment of new code to production by customers moving their workloads to AWS. So really exciting benefits. But what I would say is all of those benefits don't stop there. Once you've moved your workload onto AWS, then there's a whole host of innovative areas that are available from AWS, and our strategy is to make sure that we're able to offer frictionless services around areas like IoT, machine learning, the ability to automate more and more of your SAP tasks, but also to get some real business insight, data lakes and so on. Another use case that I've been working on recently for a major manufacturer is around how we can apply sensor technologies throughout their manufacturing processes. So there's a whole host of business benefits in that regard as well. But I think as well as all the things that I've talked about in terms of all the benefits and so on, there is a real opportunity actually for us to partner with Proceed, and before we even start that migration journey, start to drive some benefits before we actually start that migration. And Nick, I think there's an opportunity maybe for you to expand a little bit on some of those things and some of the other benefits that can be realized as well. So over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Oh, that was very good, Robert, putting that up. Good afternoon, everybody. As Robert said, my name is Nick Parkin. I'm the MD of Proceed in the UK. And in actual fact, I was talking to our management team a couple of weeks ago, because this year will be our 21st year in business, and 21 years ago we were talking to SAP customers where probably the biggest one we saw in terms of database was about 750 gig, which would now go on my laptop. But today, one of our biggest customers is GlaxoSmithKline with 85,000 users sitting on one instance, and we have a utility down in Chile, which is the biggest database I've ever seen in SAP at 180 terabytes. And as Jonathan said, there's been massive changes in SAP over the last 20 years, but massive changes over the last 2 or 3 years. And what we're really seeing today, and these are all of the examples of the scenarios that customers come to us with, but the two highlighted ones are where customers are actually moving to S/4HANA or Business Suite on HANA, or as well as moving to a hyperscaler, either a lift and shift of their existing platform, or they're going to move to S/4HANA or Business Suite. So these are really the two areas where we're really concentrating on. Next slide, please, Robert. So I think where we've concentrated over the last 2 years, and certainly with AWS, is where customers are either going to S/4HANA or Business Suite on HANA, and typically, you're either doing a brownfield migration or you're doing a greenfield or bluefield migration. So let's just talk about a little bit of what we could do for a customer doing a brownfield migration. So I put the whole chart up, Robert. There you go. So typically, and we've seen this with lots of customers. One of the customers we've just worked with AWS is a company called Ventador. They're a chemical company, been running SAP for 20 years, but have never actually ever done any housekeeping or archiving. Not a particularly big database, but having 20 years of data where you're very rarely going back to that data, and moving it over to S/4HANA seems to be quite pointless. With what you can do is just move the operational data over. So move the operational data, take that 18 years, for instance, so leave 2 years online, take 18 years, put it into an archive, reattach that to the S/4HANA system, and then the TCO savings are huge, because literally you're not taking over that 20 years, you're only putting up in HANA 2 years, and then onto much cheaper storage, 18 years of data. Next slide, please. So we kind of termed right sizing for HANA, and to us, why it's very important, because lots of people think, well, if I chuck more CPU at it, if I chuck more memory at it, everything's going faster. But if it's oversized, then you're not going to get much benefit from it. On the other hand, if you undersize it, then you do really have problems. So it's really important to get this right sizing correct and make sure that the AWS workload can manage that. And that's how we work with AWS, looking at each customer to say, where are you today? Here we go, 40 terabytes. What can we get you down to? And what does that mean when you go into AWS? So this is how we're working with customers today. Next slide, please. And how we're basically doing that, my analogy here, and I kind of use this all the time, if you were sitting in a nice 5-bedroom house and somebody said, in 6 months' time, you've got to move into a luxury studio flat, what would you do? You'd probably cry, But what you would do is you literally go around each room in the house and go, do I really need that anymore? If you don't need it, let's throw it away. But I may need this, but I can't take it into my luxury studio flat, so I need to put it into storage. And for the things that I do need to take with me, I will move. And that's exactly what we're doing with an SAP system. We're looking at data that you really no longer need because it's outside of the retention period, and that can be deleted. We're then saying other data, we need to put it into some secure storage where you've got day-to-day access to it, but the data that you need to take with you, take over to HANA. And that's exactly what we're doing. We used to do this manually. Next slide, please, Robert. We used to do this manually. Now we automatically do this. We have a product called the Proceed Rightsizer, which allows the customer to play what I call what-if games. So you put it on your system, it analyzes your system, it then allows you to say, if I was going to have a 10-year retention, how much data could I take with me? If I only want to delete data, what size could I get into? And it's actually hooked into the SAP Sizer so that we can come up with some very accurate sizing. Next slide, Robert. And to me and to us, why this is important, because we can really do this fast analysis now with a customer, whereas normally it would have taken maybe 15 to 20 days to do this analysis. Literally, even on some of the biggest systems we've seen, 40 terabytes and above, we can get this down to 2 or 3 days where you can actually see what the savings could be before you move on to the Business Suite or S4HANA. And of course, if you're also doing a lift and shift, what's the point? For instance, a lift and shift to AWS, what's the point of not shrinking your database? So again, the lift and shift where you're sitting on either Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, ASE, we can also say how big a system you can get into. Next slide, please. And these are just some typical savings. So I always bet with customers, and the bet is at the bottom, if you've been running 4 years or more and have done no archiving, we can shrink your database by at least 50%. And that's really what we can normally do. We very rarely, if a customer's been running for more than 4 years, we can save at least 50%. And you can see some big savings here. There's some big databases out there, 50, 60, 70% savings, because people very rarely do archiving or housekeeping properly. Even people that have done, they say they've done archiving and they're archiving every day, we can always find more savings for them. Okay. Next slide, please, Robert. Okay, but then we've got customers that are saying, okay, I'm going to do a Greenfield or Bluefield migration to S4HANA. And so what can we do there? Because, okay, it's going to be a small instance because you're only taking over master data and some open items. But what you're doing is leaving whole systems behind. So what do you do with those systems? Next slide, please, Robert. So this is one of the problems that we find with the Greenfield or Bluefield migration is the fact that, yes, you've taken over your open items and your master data, but for tax reasons, for legislative reasons, you've got to keep all of that old operational or non-operational data for many years. So one of the things that we have done is allowed taking that old ECC6 system or CRM or SRM and basically decommissioning that. We've got our own product called Seller, which I'll come on to in a second, where we can decommission that system and basically allow you then to turn off that old system. And again, that Seller system can go up into AWS, and then basically your business users can actually still look at that data almost like an SAP system. Next slide, please. So we started looking at this about 3 years ago. We brought out the first product early last year. We've already got quite a few customers using this, where we have saved them a considerable amount of money by literally decommissioning those old systems, having a very small, what we call seller instance up in AWS, and then allowing the users to look at that data almost what it looks like in an S4 system. So you have these UI5 Fury tiles. And we're starting to get a lot of traction now. Lots of AWS customers are coming to us and saying, yeah, we've moved to a nice S4 system, but we've actually got lots of old SAP and non-SAP systems back in our own data centers. And again, with Seller, we can do SAP and non-SAP.
Right, thank you both very much indeed for the insights. We wanted to come back to questions. So Jonathan, to start with you, you've got lots of experience of customers moving to AWS now. What do you normally see customers are looking for in their business case, and also what sort of things do they miss?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that first of all, one of the important things is to look at working backwards from what you're looking to achieve. And obviously Nick's articulated a few things there. So first thing, identify what are your priorities? What, are you looking to perform that, just that migration and drive out some of those costs? But think about, some of the business value that you're looking to create as well. So what is your strategy? And obviously everybody wants to save costs, so that's almost a given. But what I would say, there's an opportunity here to prepare as well. So I would say undertake some of the things that Nick's talked about. So you don't want to be taking more data than you need to into the cloud, because anything you can do to optimize the amount of data that you've got, that's going to help make that migration significantly easier, significantly lower risk. And the amount of downtime that you're going to get in that migration is going to be significantly reduced, and the business case is going to be enhanced as well. What I would say as well is make sure you take advantage of all the benefits of the cloud. So think about that. Don't always think about a lift and shift. Think about some of the automation and some of the SAP DevOps opportunities that can be applied by moving into AWS, because there's a whole host of benefits that can be realized there as well. But what I would say is, by moving into AWS, it's not just about the cost savings. There's a whole host of opportunities to improve the availability, the service levels, but also to operate differently. And sometimes people think of an AWS move to AWS as just shifting to a different location. The cloud opens up so many other opportunities as well. And I've alluded to some of those as well by adopting that. There's an opportunity to have that sort of frictionless approach to leveraging other services that complement SAP. So it opens up a world of connecting into sort of that connected factory world, through APIs, connecting out into e-commerce type applications and other applications as well. So and there's an opportunity potentially to use microservices as well, that complement that, because SAP is a monolithic application. You don't want to be making too much changes, and so part of your strategy might as well be to move some of that custom code into some of the cloud native services and leverage some of the business benefits there as well. So there's just a subset, and I haven't even talked about areas like data lakes and leveraging AI and IoT and machine learning, etc., as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. And as you said, where we can fit in is a number of the areas of data management that we talked about, and archiving was the first example that Nick talked to. Nick, we heard a bit about some of the space savings from archiving, but I believe there's further more operational benefits as well. Can you talk a bit more about some of the wider benefits of archiving your SAP system, and maybe also comment on whether it's good to do that before or after a migration to AWS?
Okay. So I think just touching on some of the points that Jonathan made, I mean, what we tend to find is people that have actually done what I call the right sizing before they've moved. Not only have they got the benefit of lower costs, but it's actually the time to do the migration. We've seen quite a few customers that have got large databases where we've shrunk the system right the way down, and that migration has taken considerably less time to get up, less testing as well. I think the other thing is that this is like painting the Forth Road Bridge. So once you've once you've archived, a lot of people go, well, we've archived now, thank God for that. Big sweat of the brow. But basically, yeah, you got to keep on doing it. So if you're on HANA, then you need to keep on archiving, because that's the way you keep your costs down, you keep your system lean and mean, basically. And historically, we didn't see many customers archive. They only archive when they had a problem. What we now see is most customers that have gone to HANA are almost archiving from day one. Okay. And to answer that second question that you made, Robert, do you do this before or do you do it after? Well, okay, my view is if you've got the time, do it before. So if you're planning your transfer migration to Business Suite or S4, think about if you've got the time to actually remove an amount of data before you do the migration. And I have to say, after doing this for 21 years, lots of people go, oh, I've got a lot of application data that my business will never want to actually remove or archive. But we see lots of customers where they don't actually realize that maybe 20 or 30% of their database is full of what I call basis data. So this is iDocs, application logs, workflow, which really they need to take over kind of 10, 15 years of that. So in actual fact, there are some really quick wins. So to me, if you haven't got time, do the quick wins first. Let's get rid of that. Let's get you onto the HANA platform, and then we'll carry on archiving after that.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. I see we've got a question coming from one of our audience today. Jonathan, I think this is more for you. You did talk about the different pillars of your value drivers, but do you see the main driver for moving to AWS being the cost savings, or are customers telling you that it's part of a wider digital transformation, or is it something else?
Actually, I think it's all of those things. So certainly in the past, it was mainly about cost savings. So the main focus was about, how can we save money? And, we actually recently have been working obviously with Burberry, who have moved their SAP workload onto AWS, and they've certainly achieved very substantial cost savings. But actually, once they've landed onto AWS, then there's a whole world that it's opened up. And what I would say as well is that data lakes is a massive opportunity for our customers, and the reason for that is that as part of the journey, that innovation it does unlock opportunities, because so many of our customers have got data from different sources as well. You've often got I don't know, Oracle-based databases and applications, and you might have Salesforce, you might have SQL-based systems, you might have social media as well as SAP. And I think there's an opportunity certainly with AWS to bring all of that data together, ingest that data from all those different sources, including SAP, and we've got tools to enable that process, and we've got all the analytics tools that enable us to analyze all of that data. And also there are tools out there in the marketplace from SAP and indeed from AWS that enable you to present all of that data, so that you can use those sort of KPIs, and be able to present that value to the business. But obviously, using that data in terms of KPIs is just one step as well. If you can start using that data really intelligently through the use of AI and ML, but also automate that process back into SAP, then you really are driving some value. And that's just one illustration there of some of the innovative areas that you can drive value from from AWS. But what I would say as well is, if you look at data lakes, actually you go back to some of the points that Nick's mentioned as well, that being able to ingest that data intelligently and make use of that data, it's a significant opportunity actually to actually look at the data. What data do you need? What's relevant to your business, and to drive efficiencies there, and that helps throughout the use of your data as well.
Yeah, so just picking up on that, John, it looks to me like there's a lot of options for customers when they move to AWS. They might have existing BI tools that they want to use, or they've got tools in kind of the broader AWS overall catalog. But what I'm picking up is that there's an opportunity when you've moved your systems into AWS, then you've got that greater ability to be able to go and really apply analytics and get that value, as you said, from both across the SAP systems you've got there, but all the other tools you've got there, and then you can make your choice of whether you want to use the data lake strategy or data warehouse and BI tools, and it seems to be it's all in one place, which is very attractive.
Exactly. And if you're storing the data in the storage system from AWS called S3, that's incredibly cost effective as well. So it's a really low cost storage, and the fact that you might be using sort of various tool providers out there in the marketplace, we're very partner friendly as well. So we'll look at if there are any existing partners that our customers are working with, we'll look to leverage those as well. And for example, a lot of the front end tools that we're using, or our customers are using, is SAP Analytics Cloud. And that's a very popular use case, and customers are ingesting the data using tools, putting it onto an AWS data lake, but then presenting that using SAP Analytics Cloud is a very, very popular use case. And interestingly enough, AWS is working with SAP as well, because a lot of the SaaS-based solutions from SAP are already on AWS, SAP Analytics Cloud being one of them, of course. So,
thank you, John. Nick, I'm going to come back to you for something else, which was one of the things we hear from customers that stops them moving as much as they'd like of their total landscape into the cloud, into AWS, is that they've got old legacy systems, and they can be quite challenging. Can you talk a bit about some of the challenges with addressing these older systems and how they can be helped?
Yeah, sure, Robert. So I think one of the problems is with legacy systems is that you need to look, why do you need to keep that data? So we go into customers and we say to them, what have you got? And they say, well, we've not only got the SAP system, but we've got the system before the SAP system and the system before that. They're keeping really old systems, and we've gone into certain customers either in the pharmaceutical or the aerospace business where they've got systems that go back 50 years. So this is like ancient, almost tape-based systems where they need to keep that data. Well, that's fine if they need to keep that data, but surely there must be an easier way to actually keep the data. And I believe there is, with being able to decommission that, putting it up into a hyperscaler like AWS and allowing you to retrieve that data. But for lots of customers, they only need to keep the data for either tax or legislative reasons. So if I'm a manufacturer of widgets in the UK, then typically, and I only do business with it in the UK, I only need to keep that data, my data, for 7 years, which is my tax requirement for that data. But that customer might have 20 years of data. So really, one of the challenges here is to actually, nothing to do with IT, nothing to do with technology, is going back to the business to try to get the business to explain to you why they need that old data. And this is always the biggest challenge, is go see a financial director and say, by the way, I'm going to just give you 10 years of data or 7 years of data, I'm going to delete the rest. And you see the blood drain from their face, which is, I need that data. But you ask the question, and typically, and this is probably where we score over other customers or over other companies, this is nothing to do with technology. This is having a finance person talk to a finance person about what they need in those legacy systems or even their SAP systems, and convincing them that once we've taken that data over, they can still report on it very easily, but they don't need all of this historical data. So, but you know, I think there's a massive opportunity out there for customers to just go look round their, you know, existing, you know, machine room, or if they've outsourced it to somebody else, just go and look at your asset register of all of those systems and find out, do you really need them, or is there another way to look after them? Because in actual fact, the costs of running these, if you can move them, you can use that saving for your new shiny S4 system and moving it on. Whereas it's ridiculous paying all this money for these old legacy systems. To me, it's crazy.
Actually, Nick, you're bringing up another point, which is, I think, is really interesting. That when we talk to customers, there's a lot of misconceptions about some of the things we do. You know, we hear that you know, archiving sounds like the data's gone forever, and you know, we'll never see it again. And you know, that legacy systems, well, you know, isn't the easiest thing to do just to lift and shift them. You know, I'm sure I'm just kind of scratching the surface, but are there some misconceptions like that you hear, and maybe we should be trying to explain that there's a, you know, a different way to some of the customers here today?
So I think I blame SAP for this, of actually bringing out archiving in SAP 25 years ago and calling it archiving, because archiving has a nasty connotation of a dim and dingy basement with cobwebs. I'm never going to see my data again. Whereas in archiving in SAP, that's far different. I'm literally just moving it to cheaper storage. Like Jonathan says, into S3 storage, I can still get access to it, and in most cases, get access to it through my existing transactions that I use every day. All I'm physically doing is moving stuff that I really don't need, kind of in sub-second response time, to something made to take 1.5, 2 seconds to come back from the storage. And then for decommissioning, people think, oh, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to decommission that system. I'm going to put it into some, I don't know, SQL Server database, and then I'm never going to be able to report on the data. And again, depending on what decommissioning strategy you use, it's far different. All I'm going to do is take that data, typically, put it into a new system, and give you reporting access very easily over that data. If we were talking about this 10 years ago, I'd say, yes, it was always a problem. But today, it's not a problem. Nobody should be worried about decommissioning something. And to some extent, you know, I've always used this statement, which really does confuse people, which is you can decommission for free. Okay, and people go, oh, how do I decommission for free? Well, very simply, if I've got 10 systems out there, those 10 systems are costing me money at different rates. So what you do is you take the most expensive one that you're running today, we decommission that one, we use some of the savings from that one to decommission the second one, some of the savings from that one to do the third one. So in actual fact, you could, if you have a number of systems to decommission, you could do it for nearly free or even free, and we've proved this in the past.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. There's some really interesting examples. Jonathan, I'm going to come back to you. I think I've got a couple of questions. One is, we did talk in the title of this about agility, and I'm not sure we've really touched too much on agility. I guess it's really talking about the contrast between those who've got systems in the on-prem world still and have carried on having lots of servers there that they provision and look after themselves, versus the approach in AWS. But maybe you can just make sure we have talked about agility.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples, actually. I think the whole point about you know, moving to AWS, agility is probably up there with one of the top reasons why you would move to AWS, because the whole mantra about what we stand for is that we are very much providing a service that enables you to be aligned to your business need. Yeah. So what that means in the past, if you remember, with a HANA appliance, you put that HANA appliance on the floor, and you sort of bought what you needed for the next 3 or 5 years, essentially. Yeah. So and you hope that would be enough. And in some cases, it took, if customers needed a bigger system, then it took months to actually make those changes. Now within AWS, if you want to resize an SAP HANA system, actually we're doing that in a matter of minutes. Yeah. So the whole point is that with AWS you can right size according to your needs. That drives benefits for you, not just the TCO side of things, but it means that you've got that agility and flexibility to provide that workload that is aligned to your business. In addition to that, what we're doing is bringing out tools to automate as well as part of the process. So now, for example, we've got what's called Launch Wizard, just to give you one example, and we can have a fully installed SAP S4 system literally completed in a matter of a few hours. So that's hundreds of manual steps that would have been manual in the past that we fully automated, and you will know that you've got the rigor, the quality there of that build to know that that's literally been done as a repeatable service, but can be done very, very quickly. And just another example, that only the other day actually we had a customer who needed a sandbox system very, very quickly, and literally we were able to have that spun up with it, within a day, and they had a sandbox system up and running that was able to meet the needs of the project. In the past, you just couldn't do that. So and that's just a starting point, of examples. There's a whole host of other sort of automations that are available from AWS as well, and a whole host of other innovations that we could talk about. But hopefully that's just given you a flavour for the sort of thing that we're seeing within with our customers.
But
yeah,
Robert, I'll give you another one for Jonathan.
Oh, come on.
I'll give you another one for Jonathan, which is very, very close to the sandbox. So we're working with another customer right now who will remain nameless, not on AWS. We've asked for them to spin up a new QA system, and they said, oh, that's 5 weeks. So 5 weeks we're going to be waiting to do some user acceptance testing. We have another customer up with AWS, which is RS Components. We've asked for the same thing. 2 days later, we've spun up a QA system. So this is the big difference, is that that's very agile in terms of what you can do, and the savings on that is considerable if you're waiting 5 weeks and you can't get on with the project.
Absolutely. I've just seen we have one more question from our audience, which I think is for you again, Jonathan. They were asking about AI, machine learning. So again, great benefit of bringing your systems onto AWS is you can bring your SAP landscape, you can bring other applications there, but then there's all the services that you offer, including a whole range of different, very modern AI and machine learning tools that you have. Have you seen any examples where customers are using those to enhance what they do with SAP and really bring some innovation to their business?
Oh, absolutely. So there's so many examples of where we're actually using AI and ML. And an example actually is we're actually, for a manufacturer, we're using things like we've put some sensor technologies in that measure things like humidity, pressure, noise, what the flow rate, what the vibration and temperature is of some of that machinery, and we've got various sort of sensors that has. We're loading that data. That data is going into a data lake, and we're actually applying machine learning and so on as part of that data lake, so that we actually know what the what the data needs to be, what the specification needs to be, We've got information about sort of maintenance history. So what we're able to do is to set, you know, alerts and so on that allow us to go back, and rather than wait for that, say, a failure, we actually know ahead of time if there's likely to be an issue. And so there's some huge advantages there from a maintenance point of view, being able to be proactive about ordering parts, but also doing some proactive maintenance where it's needed, so that, you know, things like machinery and so on don't you know, wear out or break. We can be alerted to those things, and if we can apply all of that information, use that, put all of that data via IoT into a data lake, and apply machine learning as part of that, then there's a massive advantage to that. And what AWS has been doing as well, you know, in that example, we've got a solution that's from Amazon called Amazon Lookout for Equipment Integration, using IoT and data lakes and machine learning, but also we've got integration with SAP in terms of that offering as well. Happy to talk about some of the details there, but that's just one example of that work in working practice. Yeah. And by the way, if any of these things do resonate, one of the things we would be willing to do is to do an assessment, and to work backwards from some of the things that you're looking to achieve as a business, and to understand, you know, what's the objective, what you're looking to achieve as a business, work backwards from that, and help you build out that business case and TCO assessment. And that doesn't come with any charge to do that assessment phase. More than, you know, absolutely delighted to support that, and also, of course, to be working with Proceed as part of that TCO analysis as well.
Excellent, Jonathan. Thank you. It's great to hear how these technologies are becoming so mainstream now and easily available. We're nearly out of time, so I'm going to ask you both just to give us some final thoughts as we wrap up. If there's any particular takeaway points that people should remember after this session. Maybe Nick, if I can start with you, any particular takeaways that we want people to remember?
I just think one really, which is if you haven't archived or house kept, start now. There's nothing like starting straight after this meeting. Go back, look at the size of your database. If there is ways of reducing that, we can help you. As Jonathan said, you know, AWS run assessments. We run a free assessment for people. You know, we get them to run a couple of standard SAP transactions, and then we can actually see how much data you could take out of your system. But if you're certainly going to S/4HANA or Business Suite on HANA and you haven't done any archiving, I would start now.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. And Jonathan, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a great privilege to be on this call, so thank you. But I think what I would say is that don't just think about just lifting and shifting. You know, think about a proper business plan. You know, do that initial assessment. Think about working backwards from what you're looking to achieve. Do all of those preparation steps. Do use Proceed, you know, early on in the cycle as well, rather than it being an afterthought. You know, use Proceed and AWS early on to help build that business case, achieve the benefits early, and then that will make the project and move to AWS an awful lot easier, and it will accelerate that the business benefits, as well as improve the cost savings that you've already got in mind as well. So yeah, so thank you very much, Robert.
Great, thank you. So I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. So I would like to thank both of our speakers very much indeed for your time and for all the insights you provided, and moreover, thank our audience for joining us. We'll be sending out the recording, and of course, if you have anything you'd like to follow up with either organization on, then please feel free to get in touch. But otherwise, we'll close it today. Thanks again to everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.